Is there anything I need to prepare in any way, or you're just gonna lead us into it?
Yeah, I mean, I just went ahead and started recording. So, I don't know if I've told you with like the hot pot gaming stuff. There's not really a formal beginning. There's not really a formal ending.
All
It
right.
just kind of happens, and I start it wherever I think the conversation gets interesting.
Oh
Honestly.
my goodness, we might have already started. No, it has not been interesting yet, so that's good.
One thing I've really taken an interest in more recent years is games made for kids. And I think part of that is because the expectations of what makes a good game for kids is very different than I feel like for most other players. So when you play them, you really have to sit down and kind of reorient your mind and look at games in like very different ways, in ways that you can appreciate them as an adult, but may just not be the more normal way people enjoy video games kind of thing. And I wanted to talk to Vinnk from Famicom Dojo about this. If you've been following me for a while, Vink's been on a couple different shows I've been on before. He lives in Japan, and probably most relevant to this discussion is that he also sells games on his website, Japan Retro Direct. And Vinnk has been kind of, in some ways, almost my sole source of import games over the last like 10 to 15 years now. And so it's this weird like secondhand filtering. But he really, I think, has a good eye for kind of interesting games that aren't necessarily the standard kind of video games people would pick up. And so a lot of those, by kind of extension, that are kids games. And it helps that kids games often are very accessible for import. So it is a pretty easy thing to pick up and check out if you really want to. But I really wanted to know more about like what he likes about kids games and how he enjoys them. But another reason I wanted to talk to Vinnk is because he's been a dad for quite a while now, and his oldest kid is a teenager and his youngest ones are still pretty young. So I figured he has like a really diverse experience kind of like playing games and watching his kids play games over the last decade or more at this point. But the conversation kind of evolves into this discussion about how video games impact his family as a whole and how that has changed kind of like their family relationship in different ways. I will warn you, we get off topic here and there talking about, the Switch's impact on the Japanese market and Konami's presence in Japan. And so it is a longer episode, but I tried to leave it all in because even though it's only kind of like tangentially aligned with the podcast's topic, I think they're interesting conversations nonetheless. I picked up the Konami microphone for the Wii today.
Okay.
Because there's like a storybook game they put out in like 2009 on the Wii, and it's only in the US, but looking at the art, I think it was one of the Japanese studios that worked on it, interestingly enough. Which they did this with like Walk It Out as well. That's also Clap Hands, if you know them.
Yep.
And they made that game and they never released it in Japan as far as I can tell. Sometimes it's hard to tell though with the Wii, because like I recently found out Happy Dance Collection did get localized in the US, but it got localized as a Kids Bop game. And it basically looks nothing like it originally did. But when you look at the like how the game plays and everything, it actually lines up about right. So
that makes sense. That makes sense. That's a fascinating topic by itself. Just all the rebranding, like how one of the Mickey Mouse Crazy Castle games became like a Ghostbusters game. Is very like
really what system was that on? NES?
Game Boy, I think.
Game Boy?
It was Game Boy because like Kemco was making the Crazy Castle series or whatever, and they were all, I think they were all Mickey Mouse games in like the US, but like one of them became a Roger Rabbit game, one of them became a Bugs Bunny game, one of them became I think a Garfield game, one of them became a real Ghostbusters game. I have to look up the exact titles, but I was like, that's just wild. But like, you got a Crazy Castle game. It doesn't really matter. Like, it's just going through doors, going up ladders. But like, it's like, why would the real ghost, whatever,
Yeah, like I guess like back then, I feel like especially like mechanics driven games, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like a South Park game that became like a Mary Kate and Ashley game at some point.
Why not?
And it's like, sure, the character's there. That's what matters, right?
Well, exactly. You got yourself, fighters did it all the time, reskinning and taking out licensed characters. If you've made a generic kart racer, you can throw anything in there. You know what I mean? Like my friends and I made a joke or whatever that they should have really made like a Capcom should have continued with their series and just gone nuts with it and made like Tenchi Muyo versus Scooby Doo or something like that. And it's just like just, just like ridiculous combinations, because once you got the engine, you just kind of,
It's kind of what Mugen ended up being, was like just
exactly,
everything
exactly.
in
I
a
bet
I,
someone's made that now. And if someone hasn't, maybe they'll be inspired today.
I'm curious because like I feel like,
Yeah.
when we think about kids games a little bit, there's kind of games for everyone, and then there's kids games, right? Like recently somebody was asking me about like, why do you cover kids games?
Sure.
And at the same time I'm like, well, I feel like Nintendo games are like good for kids, but they're good for everyone, right? So like, I guess when you're talking about Mickey Mouse earlier and the Ghostbusters game, like, do you feel like there's like a pretty, what do you define as like the difference between those, like a kids game and like a games for everyone, if
You
anything?
know, that is a really good question, because I was talking with my wife earlier when I mentioned that I was going to be on this podcast. She's like, "What are you going to talk about?" And I'm like, "We're going to talk about kids games." And she's like, "So like Mario?" And I'm like, "No, Mario's not a kids game." And I'm like, then I'm like, "Oh, what are we talking about today?" But I was like, "No, it's like, so in my definition, a kids game is something like that is definitely targeted at a certain demographic originally.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily make it a bad game, but it's one that when it was being developed, there wasn't a ton of care being put into whether someone out of that demographic is going to like it or not. That
Yeah, yeah.
doesn't mean it won't be liked outside of that demographic, but I feel like it wasn't necessarily the objective of the developer to try to make it for everyone. That's the loose definition I'm going to go with.
Yeah, and it basically, because I remember I read an article once about Princess Debut. Do you know the Nintendo DS game? It's like a little dress up game with ballerina dance and stuff, and it has like otome elements where you like date different
Sure.
guys. But there's a review online that was comparing it to like Elite B Agents, weirdly enough, and it was interesting that they were like, I rate this game more highly than Elite B Agents because it hits these points for me when it comes to dress up and
Wow.
character relationships and stuff. And the whole point of their article is basically Elite B Agents gets a higher score on like
Sure.
Metacritic, but the standards of what people are looking for versus me or whoever, I don't remember who wrote it, unfortunately,
Sure.
it's been
Sure.
forever, was like this game ranks higher for me.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably true. Like I think I mostly think about that for games for girls, but yeah, for kids as well. I guess I maybe already knew that to some extent, but having it put into words is nice, I guess.
I mean,
So
yeah. It's definitely a squishy type of topic. Like, you've got some games that the developers went out of their way to make like a kid's line. You know what I mean? Like they advertise. No, that's not one of them. I've got some, like, there was a Switch series that Bandai did that was basically like their something something kids series or whatever, and like there was a series of Game Gear games that were released, and they had different labeling, kind of different boxes, and it was like, this is our kids line. You know what
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean? And so sometimes there is that explicit, but other times it's just a game, and you got to kind of, figure it out, what it qualifies for. And like, one thing Japan's kind of nice about that is like, when they are organizing their games, they don't have like girls games section. Do you know what I mean? Like all the RPGs are put in, and all the simulation games. Now, I think they often separate. It depends how big the store is, but sometimes they separate otone games from like bishojo games, but sometimes they just throw all the adventure games in all together. And I think, for the point of like, if is as long as you are open to discovery, that's kind of good. That's, but I suppose for some people, I would that would be frustrating. I don't know.
Well, I'm kind of curious, like, because like, when did you start taking an interest in these kind of kids games at some point? Because I imagine, I feel like whenever you're importing games, it's always kind of it's easy to kind of stumble into them on accident because you're like,
Sure.
oh, here's a game that's simple enough for me to play. There's not a lot of text. It
Yeah.
kind of conveys things in different ways. So you kind of, when you're importing games, maybe this is just my personal experience, you kind of stumble into them a little bit more than if you're buying something like locally. Like, I'm not, like when I was 15, I wasn't buying Imagine games or something like that,
Sure.
right, on the DS.
I mean, that is a tough question because I think it's been through phases or whatever. Like, um, when I first got here, like sometimes I would get kids games for the nostalgia of the characters. Do you know what I mean? Like I wanted to get Doraemon games, and I wanted to get like some kids games there. Um, then there was a phase where I wanted to get kids games because so many of them were so incredibly unusual. Like I am a unrepentant fan of Mini Moni. That's
Mini Moni.
that's
Oh, is that the
Morning,
girl band?
Morning
Okay.
Musume. Morning Musume, the girl group is already for kids, but like Mini Moni is like for littler kids, and their songs are beyond stupid. But like they're charmingly stupid. Like their biggest hit was maybe not their biggest. One of their biggest hits was a song called "Mini Moni Telephone Rin Rin Rin," which means like Mini Moni's telephone, and here's the sound of it ringing. And that's great. And you have all the information you need right now for that song. And there was another one about playing paper, rock, scissors that went on for a good 5 minutes.
Yeah.
One of my favorites was called Strawberry Pie, which goes strawberry pie, yai, 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 strawberry pie. Just wait. And then it goes, then the next verse goes, apple pie, yai, 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 yai. And like, I just love it. I love it. And there's one character who was like half American, and she like does every American stereotype. Like she'd occasionally quote like Austin Powers lines, or like wears the Stars and Stripes bandana, and it was
Yeah.
always very much like, oh, she's foreign. It's just very it's Morning Musume is most famous in America. Sorry, Mini Moni is most famous in America because of clips that appeared on YouTube. You know that one where it's like surprised looking or accusing looking hamster or something like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a Mini Moni clip. That was from when they were on a talk show, and they were whatever. It was the same show where they also saw can it was like can the members of this group fit into lockers? And they like that was like the
That's a
thing.
TV segment or something?
Yeah, it was a TV. It was on a show called Utaban or whatever, and
Yeah.
it was just I love that kitsch, that stupid, like there's this the Mini Moni Christmas special. You find it on YouTube. It's one of the stupidest things ever. They had like a professional eater, like one of those guys who eats really fast or whatever. And it was like all the members of Morning Musume versus this guy who can eat the most cake in 3 minutes. It was just, and then I'm like, that was pretty dumb. That was pretty crazy. What are they going to do next? What they're going to do next is they're going to take headbands with pieces of raw meat, and they're going to put the members of Morning Musume in this place with a lizard, like a Gila monster, something like a fairly scary looking lizard. And it was like how long they'd get points based on how long they would stay without running away. And I'm like, can you imagine if we did that to our celebrities? It's like it's so intensely entertaining. Like it's just so entertaining. Like so I got it. So this game is absolutely made for children. There is no this is not for me. There's nothing for me in this. It's totally for me. Like it's um so part
It's
of it
not for
was
you, but it's totally for you.
it's not it was not made for me,
Yeah.
but it was made for me. Like
Yeah.
but like so being removed from that, so but then like once I had kids of my own, that's the next phase, and that's where I started appreciating kids games for the target audience, like whether my kids enjoyed the kids games, like whether they were quality games for them, because like yeah, again, yeah, you start off with getting the games just because you wind up with them, or they're really easy games, but not always. I'd like to go into that later about games that are targeted at children that are way too hard. And that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, sometimes they're games that are easier level. ones that are easy to like. Some of the like the Hamtaro RPGs are good games.
I think I could be wrong. I believe maybe one of those was made by Nintendo directly,
Yes,
or
yes,
they
that's right.
published it
That's
directly.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were, yeah, either published or made, but yeah, there were several of them, and one of them had the mini hams, which are hamster versions of mini Moni. Everything, like this is if you go to like like early 2000s pop culture,
Mhm,
like
mhm.
this is your Kevin Bacon. Like this is everything. Everything will go back to mini Moni in some way.
So was Mini Money specifically targeted as
Yes,
kids?
that's right.
Okay,
That
so
well,
I have like one of the games on PlayStation like as a party game. I probably got it from you, honestly, but
the actual definition of mini Moni was that it was a subgroup formed by putting in the three shortest members of the main group. Yeah,
okay.
that is the actual like it actually I forgot the name, but it was like only for members under this number of centimeters. And then later they added the taller American who apparently got away. You know, see, Gaijin privilege right there. She didn't she could be a little bit taller, but she couldn't be in the main group. You can't have her in the main group. She wouldn't understand. I don't even know if she can use chopsticks. No.
So that was popular when you had moved out there, right? Is that
It
accurate, or is
was
that
it,
after?
it was popular when I was an exchange student,
Okay,
and
and
I
that was
like
like the
and I like
early 2000s,
discovered
right?
it by two yeah early to yeah like 2000 2001 was probably the height of it, and it stayed popular until I actually moved out here. But it was on its way out. It was on its way out by then. But that's when I got. But because it was on its way out, everything was really cheap, so I bought a lot. I bought a lot of things.
I really like the I guess it's the idea of like the leftovers of any kind of fandom
Oh
where it's
yeah.
like the big property's gone. It's like now I can buy everything for like
Uh huh.
200 yen kind of things.
This is a good time to invest in a Yumi Hamasaki music. It'll never be cheaper. I'm not sure why, but like I mean, she's still got her fans. She still releases new stuff, but like if you want the old stuff, it's dirt cheap right now. It's
So and I gonna try to like dance around like ages and years a little bit because I don't know how much you actually what people know about your kids that much on the
I
internet,
I
right?
mean I'm at that I think I'm enough removed. I got
Okay.
one in junior high school, one in upper elementary, one in lower elementary, and a kindergartner.
Okay. So when you had your first kid,
Sure.
what kind of like year range would that have been? Would that been like I'm trying to remember like late 2000s
Oh, let's
or
see. That's
early
about
2010s?
I gotta think. Like the very late 2000s. Like we're talking about like 2009 here. Yeah.
Gotcha. So you know I've listened to a few podcasters now like Jeff Gersman and things like that, and it seems like I could be wrong. I feel like a lot of game journalists are having kids later in life versus earlier, for a lot of reasons. And so like I feel like there's a lot of podcasts now where you have mentions of like, hey, you know, I have a kid, and like they're talking about how their kids are kind of interacting with games a little bit. I
Sure.
was kind of curious because like it seems like depending on who you listen to, they have like different approaches to how they introduce their kids to games. Like,
Sure.
did you have a plan to introduce your kids to games, or did you just kind of say, "Hey, I like games. If she takes an interest, then sure, but don't worry about it."
I mean, games were always around. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I didn't
Was that room around? Because then you could literally be surrounded by video games if you
oh,
came in
oh
there.
they're not
Oh,
allowed.
they're not allowed in
They're not
there.
allowed. They're not
This
allowed.
is Dad's room. My
But like dad liked video games, and it was not a secret that dad liked video games. But at the same time, like um I am I didn't want to become one of those parents who are like become me, like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I didn't
I feel like that's a pretty
there's a
common
certain
sentiment from
yeah,
people that are within our age range. I
sure.
think there maybe I don't know if it's like the whole Star Wars kind of thing where like
Exactly.
Star Wars
Exactly.
dads and stuff kind of pushed people against it or something. But I feel like
We're a
that's what I
Star
hear pretty
Wars family
frequently.
here. We don't watch Trek.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Um, you know, to a certain extent, I mean, it would have been hard for my kids to well, let me take that back. I think if I would have pushed too hard, I could have had kids who rejected gaming. You know what I mean? But like I purchased games that I thought they would like to play sometimes. But in general, what they liked was just I played a lot of retro games. So like their first Kirby game was the Kirby's Adventure on the before any of the newer ones like that, just because that's what I was playing. They and like when we got by the time the Switch came out, I think that's really when they kind of got into gaming. It was easier to get into. It lot of big variety of games. That's when Nintendo started putting dual languages on the cartridge, so I didn't have to go, because when I was importing games at a very high cost, I was basically going for the ones that I personally wanted to play. But when I could get used games that would have English and Japanese, that would I could go for some more of the kiddie stuff, or the everyone stuff. Yeah.
What types of games do you think they kind of took interest in initially, like when you first saw them kind of interacting with games, and like maybe in some ways returning to certain types of games as well? Because I think there might be a natural curiosity, but
Sure.
what kind of kept them coming back, do you think?
Um, for playing, it was puzzle games. Because like Puyo Puyo, Magical Drop, things like that. They enjoyed those. But for watching, for my, I mean, like they enjoyed watching me play platform games that were colorful, like Super Mario 3D World, and Captain Toad. I think were too hard for them to play, but they very much enjoyed me watching. They enjoyed watching me play. Um, my oldest loved watching me play the Xenoblade series.
Really?
She loved it.
That's
She
really
loved it.
interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, she was a little older by that point.
Yeah,
She was
yeah,
a
she
little
could get
older
into the
by that.
story and stuff.
And
Yeah.
like
Were you playing that in English or Japanese?
in English, in
English,
English.
okay.
So, I'm not sure. Like whenever I went out and purposely bought little kids games,
Mhm.
they were always rejected. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like if I was like, "Oh, you're watching this anime now. Let me give you the game of this anime." And they would be like, "No." There's just um I some of the some of the Precure games that I am currently listing on my site are ones that I had originally bought for my children, but that they had moved on from. So like, but some kids games they did connect with. Animal Crossing, Tomodachi Collection, they enjoyed those a lot. Things like that. But like one of the things is once the older kids started playing real video games, the
Mhm.
younger kids wanted to play those as well.
Gotcha.
But
It's kind of interesting that it's like almost like a bleed down effect of like your yeah, like I guess because your older kids are playing certain things, they're watching them play that, right? And so they're like, oh, I want to play that. Okay.
so what the Princess Peach Showtime, I believe that's the title of the game. I'm like, this will be perfect for my kids, and they did enjoy it. They did enjoy it, but they did not enjoy it as much as their father enjoyed it. Like 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 they played it, but they were like, no, let's play Smash Brothers or something. I'm like, no, this game is, you're the target audience for this game, right? We're buying this game.
You have four kids, right?
I have four kids. Yeah,
Four kids,
four kids.
and yeah, I think you've talked about like as the like it feels like it's been more of like a family experience overall, right? Where it's like it sounds like you're kind of playing games together to some extent. Did you
Yeah,
notice
yeah.
any differences in like each of them and how they interact with games at all?
Oh,
And do you have
yeah.
any preferences or anything like that?
During, I mean, the time when we all really kind of got into games, and my wife is not a gamer in general.
Yeah.
She's not, but like during the pandemic when no one was going to school or whatever, I think like millions of people across the world got really into Animal Crossing. Like like really into, and so we were all playing that. We were taking turns playing that. And like that kind of, for the kids who weren't playing video games before, that kind of was because it's easy to play. It was kind of like it teaches you, how to use menus, how to whatever. And so like once we kind of moved on from that game, they kind of knew how to play video games. Like before that point, I would put a controller in my kid's hand and I'd be like, this is how to run, this is how to jump. And it was just too complicated. They're just like, nah, nah, can't do it. But like Animal Crossing was like that, that gateway game, like
It's laid back. It's easy to control, and maybe it's a little complicated, but you can kind of like just sightsee, right?
yeah.
And just like you can dig a hole.
Oh yeah.
Congratulations, you press the button and the thing happens in the video game. And I think like to some extent that can be enough
Yeah.
when
There's
it's
no
especially when it's like your
enemies.
early experience with games. Yeah.
No enemies, no time limit. Like when I tried to get my kids to play video games early on, they were just every game was too hard. It was just very much too hard. Other than maybe some music games and things like that, every game was just too hard. And like even the ones aimed at kids required a certain amount of like physical dexterity or whatever. So like I hear about people like they've got their 5-year olds playing games and I'm like, oh, that's pretty impressive. But hold on, let me take that back. My older kids did not play games when they were younger, but the younger ones did because they learned from their siblings. Like each kid has started earlier. And I'll tell you, my boy, he's eclipsed me on games. Like he's what, 9 years old right now, but like he's into Minecraft.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like I have memories of trying to teach my parents how to play Super Mario Brothers and just ending in frustration when they just could not beat the first level. Just like absolutely, and they were like, and they gave up and they never got into video games. Like, my parents do not play video games. But I remember I was trying to teach them and I was like, oh man, but like I'm lucky. I'm
How
growing up
old
with
were you
kids.
when you were trying to get them to?
Oh, maybe 8 or 9. I don't know. It was
Okay, so
the
about your son's
original,
age. Yeah.
the original, yeah, the original, NES, maybe 8, 9, 10, something like that. I was trying to get them because I thought that maybe be something we could share. Wow, as a kid, I was thinking this. I was deep. Anyway, um, well, there's probably also a hint, like if they start liking it too, maybe they'll buy video games that I can play. Because some of my friends, their mom was like into Zelda, and I was like, and I couldn't, and at the time I was like, but that's a grown up. Why would a grown up play a video game? Which is kind of funny now to me.
My dad was really into shooters on PC.
All
So
right,
like
yeah,
a lot of Doom, a lot of Quake, and like
sure,
sometimes I forget about that because when I was a kid growing up, I played console mostly, and I did
sure.
play shooters on PC, and I do have like a history of playing shooters generally even today. I like playing them. Um, but like in some ways I feel almost different than people who like have their parents playing Sonic Adventure. And I'm like, your dad was playing Sonic Adventure? What's going on? And it's kind of weird to me, but like it, I think it's
Yeah,
just like it is on that edge.
yeah,
I think we're just on the edge where there's like a different level of
I think
engagement
so.
with that. And so, obviously I think, you and I
Yeah,
feel like I think I saw a study recently that said like over 50% of millennials play games regularly. So, and like, what does it mean to play games? Because I imagine a
well,
lot of
I
people
mean,
play games on their
I
phones, right?
yeah,
And so yeah,
yeah,
I'm kind of curious because you mentioned Minecraft actually,
sure.
and like what kind of outside influences do you feel like you saw on your kids with games? Because I'd imagine you probably weren't playing Minecraft knowing your taste typically.
No.
So like how did that come about, and how and what other kind of games do you think kind of came in from like outside influences?
Well, like I think like now that's one where I bought it thinking it's one of the few victories I had buying a game my kids actually enjoyed. But like my son was super into Legos, just super, super into Legos. And like every kid in Japan is into Minecraft. Like it's so popular.
Maybe every
Like
kid in the world to some extent if you have a
I
PC.
think so. I think so, but like possibly more so because I think that in the United States, it's very divided into different games. Like you got your Roblox kids, you got your Minecraft kids. I mean, some of them play everything, and you got people who play Fortnite, and you got people who play Overwatch, and you got it's. I think it's very separate. And there's Fortnite's definitely popular here among like high school boys in particular, but like it's I mean, I would put like Minecraft on the same level as like Pokemon or something. Like it's just like kids, maybe not everyone's super into it, but like every kid is familiar with it here.
Yeah, yeah.
Like and I don't know how it is in the States right now. But like I would assume I know it's very popular everywhere in the world, but like there's just a certain but like I have tried to Minecraft many times. And it it seems like so much work. Like
How about Dragon Quest Builders? That's got objectives.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's just like it's like I'm playing and it's like my son is trying to teach me how to play. And it is exactly the same as I trying to teach my parents how to play Super Mario Brothers. He's like he's like, you need a crafting table right now. And I'm like, I need a crafting table every time I make something. He's like, yeah, but just make a lot of crafting tables. I'm like, okay. And he's like, it's gonna be dark soon. The zombies are gonna come out. You need to make shelter now. And I'm like, how do I make shelter? And it's like, well, obviously dig a hole in the ground. Oh, you need torches, but you got to craft the torch. So I'm like, ah, you know, it's like, and he said, and I'm like, he's like, just give me the controller, Dad. And he just
Oh
like does,
no.
and I'm like, just go into the menus. No, it just, and it's like, I'm like, oh no, it's happened. It has happened. I have been, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
When I was a kid, I always like my dad would be listening to the oldies on the radio. When we're walking around, when we're going driving somewhere. My dad would be listening to the oldies, and I'm like, Dad, why don't you listen to any new music? Don't you want to? Yeah, don't you want to listen to the hip music or whatever? Like, what was I listening to? Def Leppard or something like that. Like I don't know. Roxette. Like and my dad's like, this music's not very good. And I'm like, no, this music. And I'm like, I'm never gonna get old, I'm like, I'm always gonna keep up with what new music is.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, and I am trying to think if I could name four artists that are not like bands that are still going from when I listened to it, but like new bands that I listen other than the things my kids listen to. So there's a lot of Taylor Swift in our household. You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah, my middle daughter.
Yeah,
But my oldest daughter has really like I have ruined that kid. Her favorite band is They Might Be Giants,
yeah.
which is a band she can share with exactly zero people of her age in Japan. Like nobody. Like she listens to like OK Go and like They Might Be like weird nerd rock, and I'm like, I'm sorry. I have taken you out of the social circle by introducing you to my things, but it's fun for us. We got a lot to talk about.
So it's kind of so you mentioned about like a lot more variety of games being played in America. It sounds like. Do you have I feel bad because I haven't talked to Sean much, so I don't know how much I want to say about Sean. I don't know much about his kids,
Okay.
but do you know much about like his experience with his kids? And like, do you feel like there's any differences? Him being in America versus you being in Japan, and how his kids kind of interact with games, or is it just that kind of thing you mentioned
I
earlier, just
mean,
like more variety and stuff?
obviously they're into the Minecraft and stuff as well, which was really cool. So I'm hoping next summer I can bring my family to see Sean's family, and the kids can hang out Minecrafting or whatever. Well, Sean and I record some videos. Um, but you see, Sean likes different types of games than I do. So like his kids can play shooters, whereas my kids can't because I don't own many and I don't play many. So like they haven't been exposed to it, so they don't play it. You know.
Yeah. Can I ask a little bit of Japan Retro Direct lore?
Sure.
Maybe before Japan Retro Direct, you had a copy of Rainbow Six Vegas on your website for a while.
For a while,
How
yeah.
did that end up there?
Well, it's actually really interesting. Like sometimes I run across Western games that are just like randomly there. Like I'm it happens like when I was in Seattle, there's tons of retro games mixed in with like sorry, not retro, Japanese games mixed in with other titles. So like but like it just happens that sometimes I will come across like an American game, and it's often Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars.
Interesting.
That is often what it is, because that Grand Theft Auto has a fan base in Japan, but like it was never released in Japan, Chinatown Wars,
Okay.
and so a lot of people imported it because the DS was region free. And then maybe they discovered it wasn't that great of a game. So there's lots of foreign copies of Chinatown Wars in like the Z-rated section of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's that. You find a lot of like foreign Xbox stuff just because very few games got physical prints in Japan for like, and like Xbox Series X, I think there's only like 10 physical games in Japan.
Interesting.
It's
Okay.
almost nothing. They
Yeah.
pretty much
Well, I
stop.
think they pushed Game Pass really hard in
Yeah,
Japan, didn't they?
they
That's what
pushed
their
Game
whole
Pass
thing
really
is.
hard.
Yeah.
The all digital whatever, and like so, you know, yeah. I mean, it just wasn't worth printing copies because, well, it might have been worth it. Like Xbox Series X is doing a lot better than Xbox One. Xbox One was like the lowest point of Xbox in Japan, like just dismal. Like there were some weeks that Switch was outselling the entire lifetime of that console. Like it was ridiculous. But the Xbox Series X is doing okay. Like
Yeah, I feel like the PlayStation like shortage probably helped
yeah,
it a little bit because I think it
it's
was
possible.
available a little bit more. So if you wanted a stronger console, that would have been probably your best onboarding point.
But I mean, for the most part, and this will be my controversial statement of today.
Mhm.
Japan is a one console country right now. Like like PlayStation 5 exists and there are fans of it.
Yeah,
But there's only one mainstream console in Japan right now.
which is the
And
Switch,
which is the
basically. Yeah,
Switch. Like
yeah.
it steamrolled everything else. Just like there's never been a mainstream system as mainstream as that. Like it's outsold the DS now, which is insane. I never thought any system would be able to outsell. It's trampled the sales of the PlayStation or PlayStation 2, the Famicom, anything like that. It's just a juggernaut that is like cannot, and like it's popular everywhere. But like in Japan, it just obliterated the
One
competition.
thing that people like, I feel like for the last decade have said, and maybe less so today actually, but there's always like the feeling that like Japan was consumed by mobile
Sure,
phone games and
sure.
stuff. Do you think what do you think like kind of separates was that true? Do you feel like that Japan was really kind of more influenced than most other places by mobile phone games? And then I guess
Mm.
B, do you feel like the Switch changed that equation at all in any way or
Oh yeah, the Switch. Again, here's a controversial statement. Disclaimer. I think the Switch saved console gaming. Absolutely. Because it was definitely moving that direction. It was definitely moving that direction. You had games like Puzzles and Dragons and Monster Strike, which were like anything anybody was playing. Like the 3DS, they like tried to get on board that by doing offline versions of those games or whatever for maybe the people too young to own a smartphone or whatever. But like Yeah, it was every company was just like, let's put everything on smartphones. Let's put everything there. Let's and a lot of companies were just shifting towards these games. And of course a lot of those games are still very popular, but they're popular with like an older demographic now. Like you got your high school and college students playing those games or whatever, but they also probably have a Switch. But like during the time before the Switch, like 3DS generation and stuff like that, I really thought gaming, you know, portable gaming and console gaming might be on the way out, because 3DS did a lot worse than the DS, and part of it was because the phones were able to produce the same type of visuals or whatever. But like when the Switch came out, that was able to do console quality games in a handheld mode, so you were able to, it allowed, and then you had just experiences that really resonated with people. It just I'm not gonna say that it took out smartphone gaming. Smartphone gaming is still very, very big, but like the market consolidated around a few things. Like it used to be that every single company was launching their free to play blah 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 game. And there wasn't enough hours in the day for everybody to invest in all of these different games. So many of them just collapsed, and the companies went, maybe we shouldn't put all of our eggs in this one basket.
Yeah.
So a lot of companies that were going heavy into those, like Capcom, have really kind of gone back. And they're like, oh, we're going to make money on consoles again, and some companies collapsed during that time, and some companies backtracked, and some companies it was just like, um so like you've still got big smartphone games, still got very big smartphone games, but like there's not every company is chasing that rainbow anymore. It's like, yeah.
Um, I know like every parent has like different kind of smartphone policies for their kids and stuff, and it seems to vary per kid. It feels like the first kid gets the most restrictive, and the later kid maybe gets the least restrictive. Did your kids play with smartphone games at all, and or did you allow them to? And what kind of games did you find they typically played for those if they did?
um I'm a bit of a luddite in that respect. None of my kids own smartphones. We have a family tablet that they're allowed to use, but they don't have their own tablet computers. They also don't have their own switches or systems like that. Everything is, they know that, like, my kids are very aware that there is no game that they would want to play that we do not have in our house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if they know when the new Luigi's Mansion is coming out, that
Yeah,
dad's
yeah,
gonna buy it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And they know that if they get their homework done, they're allowed to play it.
Yeah, yeah.
But they know that they're not going to have unrestricted access to whatever. We have a Switch, and like, and they're to play it in TV mode, not run off to their room and, um, I'm not gonna say that it's going super well. I think I have that Switch.
Parenting has its ups and downs, I
I
guess, in
have that
terms of
I have
yeah.
that the parental controls app on my phone, so I can see how
Mhm.
much they've been playing, and sometimes I am shocked by how do you guys play games for 17 hours this day? Is that even possible? But like, the vacation days and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. But
Did,
like,
did when you grew up, did you have those restrictions, or is this something that you, as an adult, were like, "Hey, I recognize the value of this limitation"?
when I was a kid, we had one television in our house. So like the Nintendo was hooked up to it, but that was also the TV my dad wanted to watch CNN on. Like it was, and it was also the TV that we would watch movies on. And so my gaming was naturally restricted to that. But around the time I got into junior high school, I we bought a small CRT for the bedroom, and then gaming really, then it was like, I know I didn't get. I don't think I had. Looking back, maybe not enough restriction because I feel
Yeah.
like I should have.
Myself included. I definitely
You
was like
know,
left to just kind of do whatever. So
like at the time I was like, this is great, but now
yeah.
that I'm looking back at it, I'm like, I think I probably could have done better in school if they had given me some limits, you know.
I I was horribly addicted to Final Fantasy 11, which has its
Okay.
pluses, but also I probably lived my high school life playing Final Fantasy 11
Yeah.
as it's kind of that. And like as an adult looking back, like that wasn't so good, but
Yeah.
that's the life I had. So I try to make the most out of that experience, and yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, I think it's kind of interesting to say like, hey, this is the experience I had, because I think sometimes it is like almost tempting of like, hey, I turned out all right. I
Yeah.
say this not as a parent, I
Yeah.
should say, but I think a lot of times people will
Sure.
will make that kind of justification, like, oh, I was all right, therefore, whatever. Even
Yeah.
though, like, in some ways, I think with phones, especially, like the dynamic
Oh my goodness.
like connection to technology in general is very
It's
different than when we were kids.
I
So
really don't. I mean, I just see so many kids just absolutely zombieing out on phones. You know what I mean? Just absolutely disconnected from reality. And we're getting to that point right now where I've got to make some decisions. My oldest will be a high school student next year and currently does not have a phone, but has grown up not asking me for it
interesting.
because basically, able to play real games.
Does she
Pretty
call them real games, or does you call them real games?
I I I I find free to play to be a blight on humanity. But I know I'm in the minority here because I didn't grow up with that. I
Yeah.
didn't grow up.
Well, there's positive and negatives with it. I was actually just talking on my personal podcast about this recently. It's just like I have tons of respect for live service games, but also I feel like I need to be responsible in respecting like the way that they're made to squeeze you as much as possible,
I just
right?
find a lot of them are
So,
so predatory.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm not against smartphone games. In the early days of the iPhone, when before the everything just became this DLC, or free to play or whatever laden mess. There were lots of like very quality experiences that you would pay $10 for and you would have that game forever. Well, until the phone updated and it broke the game.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's another story. But at the time, I thought, wow, mobile gaming is great. Because they were selling you full like or they were. I mean, they were some of them were very bite-sized experiences, but they were complete experiences. And I thought that was a wonderful way for new ideas to get out there, indie games, stuff like that. It was just a whole new world. But like nothing, everything is free to play now. Like there are very few bought experiences now. It's exceedingly rare. Everything is, and some of them are so predatory, just so predatory. And as an adult, whatever, I can make my own decisions, but like I don't want to I'm not going to give those to my kids because I don't want to set them up for failure. You know what I mean? Like because they're either going to not enjoy it because this experience is really not enjoyable unless you spend money, or they're going to spend way too much. It's I just
Or they'll develop a gambling habit.
yeah, just my father recently, for the first time, has played a game. They've
Uh-huh.
got an iPad now because during we needed a way to chat when so like we bought them an iPad or whatever. And my dad used to love going to casinos and stuff, just nickel slots and stuff like that. He loved doing that. And so I put a couple casino games on there. And if you can't even buy a complete casino game, you have everything has buying tokens or whatever.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I put parental restrictions on it. So like my dad cannot buy tokens without going
You
through me.
knowing.
I'm the
Yeah.
only one who knows the password to get rid of the parental restrictions on my parents' iPad.
You're your dad's gamer dad.
That's right. That's right. Like I can't leave him to his own devices. So like,
Totally understandable. Yeah, it is like it is one of those things that like as you get older, it's like, oh, you're supposed to get more mature, but in some ways, I think as you get older, you just realize, oh, everybody just makes the same mistakes all the time at
oh yeah.
different phases of their life. So
Oh, I've got imposter syndrome totally. I feel that I've been spending the last 20 years cosplaying as an adult. So
I think everyone does. I
yeah.
think one thing that I think maybe I wasn't expecting coming to this conversation is like, we're talking about kids games a little bit. In some ways, this has been a very family oriented conversation, right? Like I thought it was like, oh, this kid would have this experience, and then maybe another kid might have a different experience because like a different console.
Oh,
But
definitely.
you've definitely kept it in like a family activity.
Sure.
I think is what's kind of interesting, or maybe just what I didn't expect to really think about. Um, I'm kind of curious because in Japan, arcades are a thing, right? They're not as great as they used to be, or at least that's what people
Uh,
say.
yeah.
But they're still around.
Sure.
Um, I don't know if I ever really see the American kind of like take the family to Dave and Buster's, have a very awful meal, and then go play Big Buck Hunt or something like that, right? I don't feel like I see that happening when I'm like in visiting Japan, but I'm sure it depends on the arcade you're going to. Have you guys ever done like family arcade kind of things, like outings or anything, or has arcade been a part of your
To a
family
certain
life at all?
just logistically, I haven't so much because
Mhm.
um, for kids, arcade is not going to be a great. I'm going to lose children. Like I mean, like because again, we've done it a couple times. Like we did a family trip to Sega World. Back
Mhm.
when Sega World was the thing, it's gone now. So like Sega World as a franchise is gone. Like they
Yeah.
sold out to
Gigo? Is that it?
something Gigo or something,
Yeah, yeah.
something, and it looks terrible. There was a building that had like giant Sonic the Hedgehog logos all over, and it was like Sonic wants you to wash your hands like by the bathroom and like things like that. It was great. And now it's just so generic. It's just a blue and white building. It's so boring. But anyway, when my family was visiting, we went out there and we've played a bunch of games. Some of the token redemption stuff, and then some of the dance and music games. And they had Mario Kart and that kind of immersive Luigi's Mansion game with the vacuum cleaner controller, stuff like that. We and my kids like that still. And like I've taken my two oldest a couple times to play games and to take photos or whatever. But like even those arcades have really just in my time here have really turned into like um like UFO catchers, your crane games or whatever have really like pushed out again, I'm going to say real games. But like when I came here, it was kind of half and half. It was already the transition was already happening. There were photo booths, the pretty cure machines were taking up a lot of space, but you still had you still had your Tekken whatever with multiple screens or whatever to do battles. You still had a lot of stuff like that, but like every year it's less and less, and like they're pushing out things that are a video game that exists as a video game. Like that the only thing you can truly win from it is a high score. That is an old concept.
I
Like
think the thing I've kind of come to the conclusion of, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but like arcades in some ways feel like an extension of the mobile market where it is very much live service. You're going to have this account and you're going to keep coming back. And there's, some of those games have gotcha and things like that, right? And
that's
like you
right.
play, what's that game? Pretty Rhythm or whatever. I forget what the current one, Pretty Prepara. And like they're going to show you cards. And they're going to be like, hey, for every 200 extra yen you give us, we'll print you a card, kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
And so it feels like it's doing that same thing of like trying to siphon money, like please, 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 kind of thing. So,
Oh,
which
so
in
much.
some ways, like I said, I think those games are respectable in their own regard, but it does feel like that space has become a little more dangerous in terms of how you spend your money there, right?
Like it
Um,
depends how they do it.
games
like
will kick you off. Old games will kick you off, I will say, because I definitely have played games and done like play for like 30 seconds, like, well, it's done. Another 100 yen.
yep.
So
Like there's less predatory ways of doing it. For example, the Mario Kart arcade game has the ability to buy a card and like earn points, earn coins, unlock things, blah blah blah. Or you don't have to buy. Like it's still you can do your race with your friends without doing anything, or you can decide to make an investment into it, come every week and level up and like become like, and I think that's a good way of doing it. But like there's certain games that I looked at that I'm like, this looks fun to play, and I'm like, okay, first you got to buy this card, and then you got to, and I'm like, or how about I just don't, I just, how about I, it's like, there's a lot less pick up and play that there used to be.
every time I start a new game, like when I go to Japan, I select a game to play, and it is like I have to. Admittedly, I don't speak enough Japanese, so like maybe the instructions are there and clear, but I have to do research of like
Oh
I
yeah.
want to play Dragon Quest Crossblades. How do I make a character? Well, you have to buy a card. You can't buy it from the machine.
Yep.
You have to buy it from the clerk. So I have to go up there and be like, can I buy this? And hopefully they have one of the cards or whatever. So, and then it's like the card only has like 100 rights to it or something. So it's a bunch of weird
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
it's very
there's so many caveats around it now. But, and I don't want to say it's a bad thing. I think that's one thing I do want to like specify. I think it is a trade off for
sure.
sure. Because I do appreciate kind of progression tracking. But like you said, with Mario Kart, that sounds kind of like a more innocent way to do it,
Yeah.
where it's just like, hey, if you come back, and I'm sure there's some financial incentive to be like, hey, come back and keep playing, right?
Yeah.
But I think it probably varies per game
Oh,
how it's
definitely,
handled. So
definitely. And I mean, of course, a lot of them are just digital ways of playing with your trading cards as well. A lot of those medals or trading cards. I played a Dragon Ball one for a while. That you just scan these cards in with power, and like you get a card for playing it as well. But there's also vending machines next to it to buy more cards, and the kids, one of the funniest things I would see was you've got these moms who are very much not into what's going on, but they're holding the binder for their son so he can get to his cards quickly so he
yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
win. And they're just like on their phone, but they're like holding this binder, thinking like, "Oh, how much longer I got to do this?" The kid's flipping through it, grabbing his card, scanning his card, and I was just like, yeah, but like my kids didn't get into those games.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I mean, luckily, unluckily, I don't know.
Well, you
I
you did tell me you tried to set them up with the DS version of Love and Berry, which
Love and
is
Berry.
the
Yep,
arcade
yep,
game,
yep,
and I
yep,
think you
yep, yep.
said they just bounced and just like, nope, I'm good.
Yeah,
I don't, I
yeah,
don't need
yeah,
this.
yeah. And that brings up before the last couple days, because I knew we were going to do this. I was searching everywhere for my old Love and Berry cards, but I cannot find them.
It's perfectly
They
fine.
may have disappeared in the purge,
Yeah.
like like you know, and like because yeah, I had a stack of them, and then I'm like, well, how much could old cards for an old game cost? And I looked, and I'm like, oh, that much. So I don't know. Yeah,
So yeah, I don't know if you know, but this year I believe is the 20th anniversary of Love and Berry, and they're doing a ton of stuff around Love and Berry right now.
really,
Sega is, yeah. So they have cafes going on. They had an NHK TV segment about it.
I mean, that makes
They
sense.
Yeah,
That
they've been
makes
doing
sense.
a ton of stuff, merchandise. There's like a fashion model who had like an interview about how she grew up with Love and Berry and stuff. And so like I think I could be wrong, but I think prices have gone up because it is
That could
maximum
be.
nostalgia marketing
That could be.
time right
That
now.
could be. That could be.
so so I did buy somebody's binder of Love and Berry cards.
Okay. Yeah,
So I did
that's
get
the way to
one.
do it. That's the way
Yeah.
to do it. Yeah.
And it's a little confusing because the DS only supports up to a certain year. And I was trying to figure it out, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to buy a whole binder and just cross my fingers
Oh yeah.
that
I mean,
that it works out. So, But
Fun fact: the hardware that powered the original Love and Berry machines was Naomi hardware, so that's a Dreamcast in there.
yeah, I'd be curious. Yeah, I think I have seen it. Like if you emulate it, it is like a Naomi emulator for that. So that makes a lot of sense. There's a
Um,
bunch of like Love and Berry style games that use the same hardware as well. So it's like a aquarium game, I think, or sea
oh
life
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
A
There's a lot.
dog pet thing. I don't know. It's like there's a bunch of different Love and Berry iterations, or not Love and Berry iterations, but same hardware, same
Well,
concepts, but different
it
things.
makes sense that Love and Berry would be emerging right now because the kids who are the kids the target age of that game at the time was probably about 7 or 8 years old. You know, maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older. You know, like but like 7 or 8 is like really the ones who were really into it. You know, and then their younger siblings, older siblings. You know,
Yeah.
but
Now
like
they're in their late 20s and
so
they got
they would
some
be in their late
money.
20s and they have money now. They've established and they remember it, and maybe they have kids of their own approaching that age, and like they're like, "Oh, I want to do because I was looking for another card reader for the game because that used to be something you could get for $10. And I was on Medicati and I was seeing them for like 50, $60 and I'm like,
Ooh. There's
"What?"
also a special edition pink version as
Of
well.
course. Of course there
I
is.
don't know how much that costs. It was bundled with the little pink Love and Berry DS. So I mean I find that era of like kids games interesting. I don't know if I'll actually like Love and Berry. So I finally literally before you got on the show today, I the DS capture cards got back in stock.
Oh,
So I
great.
just bought that.
Oh,
So
that's nice.
I ordered that. I still have to ship it off and everything, but now I can finally have my Love and Berry moment and capture it on camera and have my little review. And then I will probably actually not like the game that much. It will
No,
probably be
no, no, no,
fine.
no. Love and Berry. Love and Berry. Okay, hold on. Do you like music games, like rhythm games?
Kind of.
Good. Then you're the target audience.
Yeah.
Like, no, 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 no. Like this is a game for people who like rhythm games but aren't super great at them. Like this game, the people who are, you know, you go to the arcade in Japan and you got those girls who are like in the zone, like hitting the buttons, like not for them. Not for them. Like this is for the people who are like, I'm gonna do the one Taiko no Tatsujin song that I kind of like on easy. Like,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna have fun doing it. That's Love and Berry, and that's why I liked it because like the style wise, I love things like Elite Beat Agents and Owendan, but I am garbage at them. Like I'm not great. So like Love and Berry is a one button rhythm game. It's a tambourine like with like cutesy little fun songs and like it like really really simplistic gameplay and I'm like I am a legend at this game. Like I'm getting like an S rank on some of these songs and I'm like I'm all look at me, I'm awesome. Who am I going to share this with? This game is made for 7-year-olds. Like you know what I mean?
The story I always tells when I was playing Aikatsu at a Bandai Namco arcade,
Sure.
and I played it for like 15 minutes and looked over, and it was just all like 7-year-old girls and their moms down the whole line. But if you go to like
Yeah.
Akihabara,
Oh
and
yeah.
there's like pre-power machines in there, those are all like businessmen and women playing that.
Yes.
So I think it very much depends on the location of
Oh,
where you go and
definitely.
what you play.
Definitely.
But
Definitely.
yeah, I do you know about a Tokadol? Have you listened to me enough to know what a Tokadol is, or
Um
no?
better maybe not. Here
Okay,
go through it real quick.
it's basically Konami's attempt at kind of Love and Berry a little bit,
Okay.
or maybe closer like Aikatsu,
Okay,
but it's
okay.
actually built off the engine that they use for their kind of like monster collecting game called Oreka Battle. If you're familiar
Okay.
with that.
Okay.
And so instead of being just kind of like a pure rhythm game where your clothes determine, your score based off
Sure.
like, are you going to do a cute style or a pop style? The clothes are determine your move set. And so
Okay.
they're battling dolls basically. So there's two
Sure.
dolls that basically dress them up. It's like Lolita fashion kind of thing, and they fight each other. And so there's like a little bit extra layer on top of there that I really like. And I worry because I've played Aikatsu before, and like I'm okay with Aikatsu, but
Yeah.
I don't love Aikatsu, right? It's like it's fine, but I like Happy Dance Collection. So I don't know. Maybe I just need to get invested. So we'll
Mm,
see. Maybe when I sit down and play Love and Berry, everything will be all right. But I also, I think with it coming up where there's a reality where I play Love and Berry, I think I'm trying to temper my expectations a little bit
I mean,
before I
yeah.
get started, which I think is I have to. And not that I thought that it was going to be some amazing thing, but there's a difference between joking about playing Love and Berry for 20 years and then eventually getting there and be like, oh, it's time. So
Winter's coming,
yeah,
Yeah, but
I
like,
call it my Love and Berry moments coming
yeah,
up.
but
So
the thing is, though, you gotta also keep in mind that, like, since some of these games are such an investment, you find yourself, you know, because of what sunk cost fallacy or something, like
I spent
you're like,
$250 on a Token when I was in Japan. So
yeah, you're like, I love this because anything else means I'm insane. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so like, like if I was like, I played some of these games when they were new and cheap, but if I invested in them now, I might find myself liking them more because I would have to. Do you know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I I feel like a lot of these were a lot easier to get into in previous days because they weren't so every I think things were a little bit more made to be just jump in and do it. Um Late 90s, early 2000s was a great time for kids games because you had kids games on big boy consoles, but you also had kids consoles that were like epic. Like, oh, I got the Pico here, the Bina, things like that. And there were lots of ones that were released by other people too. Bandai was doing their Playdia. You had all these you had all these kind of weird systems out, and some of them only played a couple of games. There were lots of TV plug and play stuff. There was, and yeah, it seems like none of those, like, there's no reason anymore because kids got iPads. So company's not going to be like, let's make a new hardware that plays kids games. They're like, let's make an app.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I am kind of curious because, we talked a little bit about your kids interacting with the Switch. And, well, if you're listening, you might not be able to see it. Behind him is a copy of, what is it called again? It's,
oh, this
uh,
one, it's, oh
yeah.
my goodness, it's like, hold on, I gotta, it's Police Cross Warrior, or like Police Cross, or Police Versus. I don't know. It's got the X there, so
I
like,
can't tell you how many times I've put that in my cart and I've taken it out just because I need to cut back on what I'm spending. But every time I grab it just in case, and
you
then
make it
eventually I cut it out.
you're making such a mistake there. So it's like Police Cross Warrior, Love, let's see, Patrina, Patrina, yeah, but like it's like a, so they're police.
Police
Now, anyone
magical
who's
girls.
listening to an audio version of this, I'm going to describe. There are four girls on this cover who are holding the things that are obviously the toys that came out along with this
Yeah.
television show. This was a television show, and they're with their costumes look pretty legit, but the toys they're having are very much like not ready for television. Like, but on television they use the actual toy so that when you buy the toy, But I've always, I guess that's more truth in advertising because you used to watch like old Kamen Rider or Power Rangers, and they had the coolest gadgets. But when you bought the home version of it, it's like, what's that meme? They're like, I want McDonald's. We've got McDonald's at
McDonald's at
home. The
home.
McDonald's at home. Like, those toys were definitely the McDonald's at home. Yeah, we got Kamen Rider at home. The Kamen Rider at home. But like, I think maybe it's like actual regulation. They have to show the actual thing that
Interesting.
they've been.
Yeah, yeah.
But like, if you look, the toys are like garbage. Like, but anyway, so this show is like a magical girl show where you've got girls who are, you know, just regular kids, and then when they see a crime, they turn into these sparkly they're only police officers in the fact that they have very, very small hats. They're police hats.
Little police
Like
hats. Oh yeah, you're
they
right.
that
I didn't
is.
notice that.
Other than that, I cannot. They don't have. Do they have badges? They do. They have very sparkly police badges, as well. But other than that, they're basically just pretty cure or whatever. Any magical, and they fight crime, but crime is kind of like monsters, I guess. Like I don't know. It
What kind
it
of game is it?
it is a rhythm game, and
It's a rhythm game. Okay.
it is a great. I think it's like if I remember correctly, at least for the levels I play, it's like a 4 quadrant rhythm game that uses the
Hmm.
motion controls. It's like up, down. It's like up,
Okay, so
right,
Samba
down,
de
right.
Amigo-ish almost.
A little bit, yes,
A little bit more
yes,
simplified, but
yeah, yeah. Simplified Samba de Amigo,
yeah.
which yeah, and there's story in between, and there's a card collecting aspect, and in between rhythm stages, there's also like a platformer,
Yeah.
but it's more like jump when you should jump, not
Yeah,
like
yeah.
let's explore this world, but more like there's a bunch of hearts in this path. Here, maybe you can kind of see in the picture there.
Yeah.
And my youngest quite enjoyed this game.
Mhm.
She played it. She played it almost as much as her father.
Fallen out of favor, now it's on the store.
It's just yeah,
Buy it today.
buy it, buy it. I'm not. Yeah,
I think
I
maybe in kind of singling it out. So one thing I hear a lot these days is this idea that there aren't many Japanese only games anymore.
no, there really aren't.
Um
There really aren't.
and but when I think of kids games on the Switch, I feel like I see a lot of them still.
Yeah,
Like
tons, tons.
and that's like maybe I don't know if that is like a sacred last bastion of Japanese only games, or if there's like a greater a number. I mean, Dojin games is kind of another
Well,
thing as well, but like I don't know how have you felt about those games and like do they feel like they are because you mentioned earlier that you're like
yeah,
late 90s and early 2000s like kind of the golden era to some extent if you want to put it that way. Like what's the difference between like then and now with the Switch in that regard?
Hmm. I would say the Switch is as you put it. It's the last bastion of of a lot of types of games. Do you know what I mean? The Switch is the final vanguard of a puzzle game sold at full price. Like I bought Magical Drop 6 recently, and like they've got the Puyo Puyo games or whatever. There's no chance those make it into the next generation. I mean, I'd love for it, but like that is considered something that's a free to play smartphone game now. You know what I mean? There's no it's done its time. You know, it's um but like for kids games, like I think in the West no one's gonna if you've got your cool property that kids are into now, you release the app.
I think there are like Peppa Pig and Bluey games and stuff, so they're definitely around.
They
But I
are.
don't know
They are.
how this might be like one of those perception bias kind of things where like I just look at more Japanese games, so I'm not looking at the I don't know how many Peppa Pig games there are on the Switch,
There are
right?
two. There are two.
like
Right?
like I was saying that thinking there was only one. But so
There are
it
two.
could be, one of those things where like I just have a kind of bias that like, oh, I look at more Japanese games, so I feel like there's more kids games coming out in Japan for the Switch or something like that.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's just like more physical games in general are coming out because like
Mm.
I do think there's a lot of shovelware kids games coming out on the Switch on the eShop. There's tons. There's tons of like pseudo educational or just like My Burger Factory 5 or just like again kind of those free to play kind of predatory blah blah blah, or low cost, low quality stuff. But like I think a kids game enough to like every anime gets a kids game now, and like a lot, that's actually a physically released product in Japan, whereas I think a lot of, I'm trying to think, what is a property, what is a Western property that a lot of kids would be into these days?
A Western property that a lot of kids. I'm maybe the worst person to ask. Paw Patrol. Is that feels old at this point?
Paw Patrol has games. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I I I,
There's
I
a very bad one that came out recently. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure. Like very like this is the minimum budget to make something a playable thing. Recently that came out.
yeah,
So
yeah. I hmm.
I'm not a parent, so I'm probably the worst person to ask most of the
I
time.
just I feel like, you know, people are still buying a full priced game based on a property, you know, or a TV show or the concept of dress up or something like that. People are still willing to do that in Japan. But I think outside of Japan, I think it's hard to find a market that they're just going to be like, I'm going to get something like that for my smartphone for free.
Yeah. Here's the Bluey app, and it has like a puzzle game, and
Oh, the
it might not
Bluey
be
app is
good.
so predatory. Oh, I hate it.
I didn't know that was a real thing. I mean, it makes sense, but
It's an it's like iPhone, iPad app or whatever. I'm sure
yeah.
Android tablet as well. But basically, it gives you just a very tiny bit. You can
Mm,
play as two characters in one setting, and then if
gotcha.
you want to do, I'm sure there's tons of stuff. It is a subscription model. You pay $10 a month, and I'm like, I
Your
am paying
Bluey
that.
MMO subscription.
Yeah, basically. But without that, like, but it's basically unlocking an offline game. There's
Yeah.
nothing, it's it's paying money for to unlock what is already on my, like, it downloads the whole game. It takes up a ton
Yeah,
of
yeah.
space. So it's just to unlock the stuff that's already on that on a reoccurring payment. Like, if they said unlock the full game for $30, I might have done it. Or unlock Bluey's preschool for $10. Maybe I'd do that. But it's like it's you get pretty much, you get only enough to hook the kids for free, and then anything else is a subscription model, and I hate that. I just
I
hate it.
don't know if it's because I'm old, but like
Yeah,
even Nintendo Switch Online, I just like I don't want to subscribe to that. I'm just going to if I will buy some copy of Super Metroid somewhere if I need to, or like my Super Nintendo Classic, and I don't really want to. I don't know. It's like in some way, and I just might just be an old man thing. Just like
yeah,
it's like I don't own it, therefore I don't feel the need to subscribe to play this thing.
that's
I
right.
would rather go invest my money somewhere where I will have Super Metroid ready for me regularly if I'm going to
I
do
know.
that, right?
I know.
So,
My
or in some cases now, I just like I will buy the Japanese coffee from you, and then if it's like significantly cheaper, like I bought Crystal Chronicles Rings of Fate. My intention is to play that in English, but
exactly. Yeah.
but
I
I can
know.
have this on the shelf to be like, that's the
Yeah.
thing that I need to play.
Yeah, it's my brain tells me that Game Pass is a good deal. It
Yeah.
really does, and it is. I'm sure it is. It's a lot of games, it's a ton of games, but I've bought physical copies of games that are on Game Pass for the cost of a month of Game Pass and barely played them. I just I cannot wrap my head around not owning games. I've gotten used to it to a certain extent with things like Netflix and things like that, but it's still, I buy Blu-rays. Like, I games are so important to me. Like, television shows are, I feel, kind of ethereal. You know what I mean? I'll watch it when it's on, I'll watch it when it's popular. So I'm okay to do a subscription service for that. But for me, games are on a different level of product, which I can't quite explain. But
Well, I think I mean I don't know your personal like so my life. is maybe way too much based around video games. Pretty much everything I do is based around video games. And, as a childless adult, that means a lot of my free time that's not working
Sure.
goes into video games. And so, like, to me, video games is like, it has attached itself as a part of my life. Maybe if I had kids, that'd be a separate thing. But I get the impression with you, video games are, obviously your family and everything comes first and foremost. But when in terms of like entertainment media, if you could just push everything else away, if you had to push everything else away, video games would probably be the thing you just are like, this is, I'm not letting go of this, right?
Oh
I
yeah.
feel like that's an easy, or for me, that'd be an easy decision, but I don't know for you. But
Um, the other a while back, like I was we had a big typhoon that was headed for this area, and I was, coming up, it was fine. We were totally fine. But I was kind of coming up with scenarios. You know what I mean? Like, what if the power goes out for weeks? Which it could happen, if there was a disaster or whatever. And I was thinking like, ooh, I got a solar power bank thing, and I'm like, if I couldn't do anything else, I would get so many games done. Like I just, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like I'm good for entertainment for the rest of my life. I have more games in this shot behind me than I will ever finish in my lifetime. And like if I didn't have so many other things to do, that is what I would do. I'm But since I do have so many other things to do, and since gaming is actually something that I hold almost sacred, if I've only got a little bit of time to do something, that it's not valuable enough to go into gaming. I will watch some stupid YouTube video, or I will watch an episode of something because it's simple. Because if I play a game, I want it to be game time. I don't
mm.
know if that makes any sense.
No, I definitely get that.
Yeah.
I'm in some ways trying to change that in my life, actually. I am playing Polarium right now for the first time on the
Ooh, that's a
DS.
fun one.
And yeah, I'm just like, if I am sitting there and like today I just had like a bad day at work, and so I needed, after like a kind of a painful meeting, go and just like chill for like 5 minutes just to cool
Sure.
my head. And I just did like two puzzles in Polarium, and I was like, all right, cool. And like in some ways it's kind of bad because you associate that with like the experience of work kind of thing, right? But at the same time, it's kind of nice to just like have something you just pick up and be like, puzzle done.
Oh yeah.
And then you're just done. And like mobile games in some ways feels that way, but
Oh
I
yeah.
think something I've kind of felt over time is that mobile games feel like they give you the quick like dopamine hit without you really need to do a lot of things a lot of
Oh
times.
yeah.
With the
Oh,
puzzle
definitely.
game, I think I have to figure something out at the very least, right? I'm at least doing that. And like Wordle, I think probably fits into this for most normal people, right? Something like that.
Oh,
So
definitely. I
so
mean,
yeah.
yeah, obviously. I mean, one thing that I've found, like, modern gaming is actually, I mean, obviously, like, this is not my generation, but like, modern gaming is not meant for someone with my lifestyle or schedule. Do you know what I mean? Like, I I have an Xbox right now, and I quite want to play it. It has a lot of games that are of genres I didn't play previously. I want to get into like the Yakuza series, or some like nice, like fancy RPGs that never came out on Nintendo platforms and stuff like that. But it feels like whenever I devote some time to, get down and do something, I'm waiting for an install or an update or something. Like, and by the time it's gaming time, my time is done. Like, I feel like, so that's why I often reach for the Switch, because it it's but the thing is, because of that, I'm very much limiting myself to the types of games I play. You know what I mean? Like, but gaming is something that I very rarely do solo anymore, and it is one of my bonding times with my oldest daughter. We play through adventure game mystery type things. We're talking like Phoenix Wright
Famicom Detective
series.
Club or something like that,
Famicom
or
Detective Club is what we're doing right now.
Mhm.
We're playing through the first two right now, and then I will open up my limited edition of the third game. Actually, no, I'm like I could unbox it right now, but like it's like,
Live unbox.
but but what I'm saying is, I feel my daughter might be upset if I do it without
Yeah,
her there.
you should hold off. You
No,
should.
no, no. But what
You
I'm
should.
saying is that's the level we're at with that. Is like
Yeah, yeah.
I don't play those games alone, and neither does she. That's what we do together, and we try to figure out. We played Ghost Trick together. We played through Xenoblade 3 together. We yeah, we did the whole original Ace Attorney trilogy. We're on the second trilogy right now.
And is that mostly you playing, or do you guys take turns, or does she play and you watch, or how does that work
Because
out?
of just the very nature of the games, that there's no quick response, there's nothing like that, so it doesn't really matter. It used to be always me controlling it, but if I'm tired, I'll be just like whatever. And for Famicom Tante Club, of course, it's fully voiced, but for the Phoenix Wright games, they're not voiced, and it's actually been one of the best ways of my daughter practicing her English,
Oh, interesting.
because we take turns reading
Yeah, yeah.
out loud. Because originally she didn't have the vocabulary to do some, because it's a lot of legal words and things like that, so it was a vocabulary building. You know what I mean? And like now we take turns, and like I help correct pronunciation and stuff as she goes through, because there's a lot of complicated words. She's speaks English very well, but like having not grown up in the United States, and it's not
Imagine most
quite.
of her English experience is you and media. Those are probably the two
Definitely,
things, right?
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. There's no other real foreigners her age here. So like, so yeah, so that's been helping to build up those skills. Um, yeah, through video games, which
I'm
is
kind of
very
curious. Is there any vice versa? Because I know you've mentioned me before, like some of your hangups about your own Japanese. I know everybody's always very conservative about how much Japanese they know, right? But you've mentioned like I don't necessarily want to play a game in Japanese or something because it's hard. Do you ever find an experience where you play something with them in Japanese and they know a word that you don't, and they kind of teach you what a word means or anything like
oh
that? Or
all the time, all
yeah,
the time. Like, yeah, yeah. I mean, there's certain games that never got released in any other region that I want to play
Police
through, but like,
Girls or whatever that game was, the Police Girls game.
yeah,
No English on that card, I'm guessing.
there is no English on that card. Although I gotta say, I've been able to piece together the deep plot fairly
Yeah.
well. I mean, the cut,
Xenoblade 3 level of complexity
but like,
there.
yeah, definitely. But like, I don't actively use video games as a means of studying. So
Yeah.
like, maybe I should. I don't know. Like, I I don't
You got
know.
enough going on in life if you want to play
There's a
video
lot.
games.
There's a lot. There's a
Yeah.
lot. There's a lot going on. So when I'm playing video games, I want to just kind of chill. I mean, but yeah, to a certain extent. And one of the things is, so I don't feel so guilty as a parent, is like my kids are only allowed to play video games in English, unless it's like something where they're where either wasn't released in English, or whatever, because I feel like, at least they're learning something, like, so we play, all of our systems and things like that are set to English, so that's a way they can, they can gain that. And I think the only exception we do is like, I think Splatoon because they play it with their friends sometimes. So it's gonna be set for the region. So I think we do that one in Japanese. So, but like in general, um, it's it's my like no, they're learning something. They can, they're practicing their English.
I think so one thing that you did a long time ago, and I think everybody who like is a content creator on the internet, it's always like a fine line you walk, but I think your daughter said she wanted to make a video once.
Sure.
And I don't know if this is an ongoing thing. I will be honest with you, I don't follow Famicom Dojo as closely as I used
That's
to
fine. That's
anymore. So
but like
but
there's been very little in recent years. So
Um, what I feel like, if I remember correctly, the first video she made there was it a Momotaro Densetsu game
now that
on
was probably
Super
the
Nintendo?
second. I think the first one I think
Okay.
was a Pokemon was like Pokemon Coliseum, the first one that didn't get released
Mm.
outside of Japan. And she was just going through. Oh, she was so young then. I watched that game. Yeah, like I the last one of that series I made was about 8 years ago. So like that, like we recorded one about Sakura Wars columns that I still have the footage of that I just never edited together because like we missed recording like a couple scenes that I wanted to get in, and now so much time has gone that it would be like I suppose I could rewrite it and be like my daughter from the future is giving advice to my daughter from the past. I mean, I could blue screen it or something. Like, I don't know. I don't know what to do with it anymore. But like now that my kids are getting older and kind of the turn that the internet has taken in the
Yeah.
last few years, I think that series is done.
Yeah. I think most
Um,
people are a lot more cautious about what they expose when they are like sharing pictures of
I
their kids and
used
stuff on the internet.
to
So,
I used to post updates about my family and gaming and things like that on Twitter, and I wouldn't do anything like that anymore. In the last I mean, I don't want to go into politics obviously, but like in the last number of years, it's Twitter has gotten really bad for someone who has a family of mixed race.
mm.
And um I don't want to feel bad all the time. So I don't so I focus only on the video games now, and like I've gotten some truly heinous comments
Yeah. And it
which
protects your family as well, right? Like
Mhm,
that's the other thing. So,
exactly. I mean, being so isolated where I am, I'm not really necessarily worried for a safety thing, but it's more of a sanity thing. Do you know, like it's I it's sad because it used to not be as bad. Do you know what I mean? It like I thought I was going to do a whole series with watching my kids grow up in gaming and stuff like that, and they would have those to look back on when they were older and stuff like that. But like it, I don't know. I feel like there's a license to be horrible now. So, like,
yeah, I feel like something like that as well is a
yeah,
like looking at it from today's perspective, maybe like 10 years ago when your kids were younger, I maybe would have thought like, "Oh yeah, just do whatever."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But like I think everyone like I have plastered my face and name all over the internet. Could I if I took that could I take that back or would I have liked to take that back? I don't know. Too late. So, but like I feel like that's something like today, if you were to do something like that, it'd be like a private thing you do for like fun for the family,
Sure.
not to put it on display for the
Yeah,
world. And
I
if
think
your
so.
kids decide, that you want to do it, obviously I don't have kids, so that's just my personal judgment call.
Okay.
So I'm not saying, what to
No,
do
no,
with your
no, no,
life,
no, no, no.
but yeah. But yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about. Well, I guess maybe not, I live in America, so I know how things go in terms of like what gets worse and what gets better kind of thing. Obviously from Japan, I'm separated from all that. And like
Sure.
sometimes you would like to think the forward progress of time would make things generally better for people, but
Right?
yeah,
Was
it's
that a naive notion? Like when I was a kid, I was like, things will constantly improve in life. Like, like,
yeah.
so,
Well, you
yeah,
played Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and that whole game's about hope.
yeah,
So there you go.
yeah.
That was his whole thing. The director was like, that's what he wants to tell the children is to have hope or whatever is what he
Xenoblade 3
said.
is a fantastic game. It really is. I I enjoyed it a lot. Not sure if it's my favorite in the series, but it's definitely the most like you can play this without having to like get bogged down, and like the battle system is complex enough that it's fun, but like Xenoblade 2 is a fantastic battle system that you master around 80 hours into it. Like it's it just, and
That's
even
why
then yeah, yeah.
I always say Torn of the Golden Country, even though it's like technically comes afterwards, that's the
Sure.
place to start.
Yeah.
Like, cause it gets you on board going, it's a 10-hour game. They got to get you going.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, where Xenoblade 2 is like, yeah, 30 hours in, here's another tutorial screen. It's like, oh, okay. But yeah, yeah, I know we got kind of like a weird topic there, but the intention I had was to kind of segue us into talking about Momotaro Densetsu a little bit
Let's do it.
because it is from my perspective from the
Oh my
outside, it is a
goodness.
big franchise in Japan. I think I saw that Konami amounted for like the third most software sales on the Switch last year, and I have to imagine almost all that is Momotaro Densetsu on the
Yeah, there's a
Switch.
little Bomberman
So
in there.
Bomberman.
There's a little Power Pro baseball in there. Power Pro
Mhm,
is actually
mhm.
probably a good
That's
chunk of
probably
it.
a big
Probably
chunk
a
of
good
it too.
chunk of
Yeah,
it.
actually, you're probably right on that.
Um,
I think there's also a version of their other baseball game on there as well.
they
It's
they they
primarily a
they make
smartphone one,
really
but
good sales in the first week of any new Yu-Gi-Oh game they release,
yeah,
because the
yeah.
games will come with like 3 cards that you can only get in the game. But
Oh,
then like
really?
immediately the market gets flooded with used copies because a lot of people buy the copies, take the cards out, sell the game. They never even play it.
Which, given how much cards cost for that, sometimes it's probably not
Exactly.
that expensive.
It's not that bad, because like only like the first print of the games will have the cards. So it's like,
Hmm.
but like the games usually never get a second print because you know.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I
but
feel like
like,
there's this whole space of board games in Japan on consoles
oh,
that like
definitely,
doesn't come
definitely.
over here at
Oh
all.
my
And they're
goodness.
all like different. Like Game of Life in the US is different than Game of Life in
Jinsei
Japan.
game, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
quite
I guess
different.
I'm looking like from your perspective, A, does your family have any relationship with those games? And then B, you know, what do you know about maybe the grander scale of why those games are so popular in Japan? Um,
Okay, no, that's a very good question. And it's something I'm not sure if I have a complete answer to, because one of the things is like in general, board games are not that popular in Japan. When you go to like a store, like a toy store, you got a few. You got the Jinsei game, the game of life. You're gonna have there'll be a chess set there. There'll be a few, things like there's a game called Donjara, which is like a children's simplified mahjong game, which often has whatever characters are currently popular right now. So like a Mario Donjara or Doraemon or Doranjara for Doraemon or something. It's very um and those are fun, but like I feel like the idea of like a family game night is not as huge as it is like in the States. And like so but I think it might have been previously, but like I think the games have this aspect of plug and like just pick up and play, um in a way that like I'm sure the electronic versions of the Jinsei games outsell the physical by several orders. Like do I have a few? I probably have a few, but it's a genre that like still kind of confounds me a little bit because I don't know if I think it's all that fun. Like there's so many. Like Rockman has one called Rockboard.
On like
It's one of
the
the
Super Nintendo or
Famicom.
Famicom.
It's going
Okay.
all the way back there. The game called Rock Board,
I
which
don't think
is
I've ever seen that actually.
it's quite expensive these days.
Yeah.
But like it didn't it didn't used to be that bad. Like it's like, but like because it's not a Rockman game, but completionists need it now. So like, but like and there's all kinds of different. Momotaro is a little bit. I don't. I don't know if I always put it in the same vein as those other games because Momotaro does involve a bit of like it's more of a like a monopoly type thing because there is the amount of strategy, whereas a lot of them are more of like the Mario Party type of lot of luck of the draw, things like that. Maybe Momotaro type is more common these days because there's less these days than there used to be.
Yeah. I'd say like Fortune Street would
Fortune
kind of feels
Street,
like it would fit in there as well.
um, Billion Road,
One of
things
those
like
got
that.
localized actually, Billion
Yes, it
Road
did. Yes,
recently on the
it did.
Switch. Yeah.
Yeah, which
Or
was
not recently,
surprising.
5 years ago.
Surprising to me. Like, bring Momotaro over because it's
Yeah.
if I'm gonna play any of those, Momotaro Densetsu is the one I'm gonna play because it's interesting. It's artistically interesting. The game has luck, so you don't so like the adults don't always crush the children, but
Mm.
also strategy in the fact that you can say you can be good at it or bad at it, but like um
So it's kind of like a happy middle ground between Mario Party and Fortune Street. Because Fortune Street, I can't imagine a kid getting very, very far in that
no, it's
building
it's
investment
it's
stuff.
in that way I'll put it kind of like Monopoly in the fact that like Monopoly part of it is based off shrewdness of trades or whatever, but a lot of it is whether you get good dice rolls, and pick up enough properties early in the game. um Momotaro Den Tetsu is of course a spin-off of Momotaro Densetsu, which is a game based off a classic kids fairy tale. So like
I actually
um
don't know much about the original game at all, but
so basically you've got your Momotaro stories which are public domain, so anybody can use that, so that's great. And then Hudson made a game that was an RPG, Momotaro Densetsu, the Legend of Momotaro. And then they kind of made a spin-off game kind of as a joke, Momotaro Tens Den sorry.
I get mixed up all the time as well.
Hold on. Momotaro Densetsu Tense. Oh my god, I've forgotten how to speak. Densetsu, yes, okay.
Yeah, Den
Um, with
Tetsu. Yeah.
yeah, which basically is a pun, and it's
Yeah.
talking, and it's talking about the trains and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like
The
the
whole
people
game board is like a train system and everything.
Hudson,
So
the people who were the original Hudson were total nerds, and they were super into trains. Like the and PC Engine is like a train engine. That's why it's called that.
seriously?
Yeah. Yes.
I didn't know that.
It's the little engine that could. It's
Yeah,
Thomas the Tank
yeah.
Engine. It's like apparently they were like huge nerds, and like around the Hudson offices they had like train sets and stuff like that. And
Now I'm thinking
they're
of
like
like a semi truck with the PC engine is like the front car and the PCFX is like the back box driving down
yeah.
the street.
No, I just see like the PC Engine like being this massive train set that's going down, and the PCFX is like Rolfie running behind, like, wait for me, like arms flailing, like I'm a video game system too. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So apparently they were like, so like you've got this spin-off that was like trains, and it did really well. It did so well that it surpassed the original series. They made a couple more installments in the RPG series, and they made a platformer too, which was like Momotaro Densetsu Thunder, Dynamite, Lightning, something. I don't remember. And it was a platformer. But like in general, the series is now just those. Just like how Mado Monogatari or whatever is like just Puyo Puyo now. Like the RPGs nobody cares about anymore. They just like they took the characters from that and it's Puyo Puyo. So like it's one where the spin-off series became Bust a Move. Like who makes a new Bubble Bobble game? Nobody. Like, but there's a million. But yeah, you know, it's a kind of sad actually when the original series just goes away. But
In some ways, Fortnite was that too. Fortnite
yeah,
had an
that's true.
original
That
game
was
mode, then the battle royale overtook everything.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
You know, it happens. It happens sometimes.
it's interesting to think about because, like, maybe I wonder if like part of it why the game might also the board games potentially. I think is what you said is I wonder if it's just like a space thing as well of just like holding board games. You kind of need a full closet to have a variety of board games. Or on
You
the
know,
Switch, you can
yeah.
just have a cartridge, or
You know,
even
I
if
yeah,
even that.
I had definitely thought of that, and I mean, sure, it applies somewhat to like families living in Tokyo and things like that. Where, but like where I am, my house now is bigger than my house growing up. You know, like and like and we've got a big old kitchen table, and a lot of people do. I feel like a board game is something that could be. I have a huge collection. I enjoy board games. We've got like Catan and stuff like that, and so, but like, um, so I'm not sure how much that comes into play. I'm sure definitely in the big cities more, but I think it's more of a convenience thing as well, um, and like just the not having to worry about all the pieces and stuff like that, and like I'm not sure exactly how much it goes in, but like Momotaro Dentetsu, that was it, Dentetsu. Oh my
Dentetsu,
goodness.
yeah.
Go back and edit all the old ones.
No, it's gonna go how it was.
Yeah. But like it kind of faded away as well though.
Yeah.
Like,
So do you think the Switch is kind of a more recent revival of it, or
well, there's no Momotaro game on Wii U. There's
okay?
none on like it
Is there one on Wii?
there's two on Wii, I think. And like and they sold oak and like what was weird is came out and they sold fine, you know, but not enough to keep the series going. And the series was basically discontinued. And then there was this television show. Now, I am not entirely sure if this television special was one of those we are making a nostalgia special or if it was a coordinated effort to revive the series. But they did an episode of this one with a lot of celebrities. It was like a 2-hour special where they dressed up as characters from this thing. These are like comedians and celebrities. I'm sure you can find this on YouTube. And they like shared memories of playing these games. And then immediately the price of all the games went up, especially the Wii
So it's
ones.
almost like a nostalgia play to
Yeah,
some extent. Yeah.
especially the Wii ones because that was the hardware people still had. This is
Yeah.
during
Yeah.
the Wii U years. But like people are like, I've got a Wii. We got to find. So like these games that were selling, that were like bargain bin, whatever, we're suddenly selling for like $70 because people. And then like it took a few years, but Konami's like, maybe we should get the old team together and make a new one. Or they were planning to do it the whole time and they sponsored the show. I still don't know.
I was just looking. I don't know for sure if this is the most or the first one that came out on Switch, but one of them did list 2020 as their release date.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it also everyone being trapped in their house was a part of it as well. Like we need something to do, please.
It is definitely possible. But
Yeah.
the Switch one came out and I think it outsold everything except for maybe like the Super Famicom ones, which was like the high point of the series. Like, or, and like, and then the next one came out and outsold that. Like, and I think the best selling entries now are Switch entries, but like, just absolutely a revival of a series that Konami had ended. You know, yeah.
Konami's made, I think, one thing, and I would like to make a video about this at some point. I think Konami's made a lot of interesting moves since Metal Gear Solid got killed off. And I think it's
Yeah.
just not very apparent in America because we just see Castlevania collections show up and it's like, cool, thanks. but I think there's a lot more going on with them. But just like so much of it is so Japan focused. So
I as a gamer who like looks behind me and looks at the side labels and like finds all these Konami Konami, when you saw that logo come on in like the Famicom Super Famicom days, you're like something special is about to happen. Like it was like they Konami was just like this, like they did release tons of crap, but like we didn't know it,
yeah,
because the stuff that came to the States was like the best of the best because of Nintendo's like you can only have five,
yeah,
although we're gonna have Ultra, they're gonna have five, but like don't want to get into that, but like it was just such a great time. And then going into it, you had them doing like Castlevania and like Metal Gear and like Contra and like it was just like, and then like suddenly they don't do anything anymore, and they buy Hudson and they make Hudson not do anything anymore, and as a gamer you're like, ah, but they've never been so profitable in
yeah,
their whole history.
yeah.
They've
It's
never
crazy.
been so profitable. Like they're right now making a few targeted games that sell so much.
Yeah,
They're making Momotaro, they're making Power Pro, and and like as a nod to like people of our age, they're releasing collections of their old stuff.
yeah. They also have arcade baseball and mobile baseball games as well.
Exactly.
And like they have like the in the arcade they have Bomber Girl, which that's kind of old at this point.
Yeah.
There's the kind of spin-off game that's like I actually played quite a bit of it. It's Chase Chase Jokers. I don't know how successful that is, but it's still going.
I
So,
mean, nothing's going to
but
be as successful in Japan as their investments in the what I would consider non-gaming sector.
mm,
Like Konami owns fitness clubs.
yeah,
Konami owns, like a bunch of recreation things. Like they are heavily invested in the pachinko market, obviously,
yeah,
which people don't realize how lucrative it is. Like just absolutely. Um, and like they're just making money hand over fist, and
yeah,
like gaming is such a small part of their profile now, but like the stuff that they do release is being received in Japan extremely well.
yeah.
So like, but we in the West are like, what, Konami, we used to be cool, right?
I
Like what
think
are you, yeah.
I think in the last financial report, and none of this really matters. This is not really about kids games now, but their financial reports. Talk about kids games. How about Konami financial reports? How do you feel about that? But I think they
Nothing
did
kids
say
like
that
more than
they
Konami financial reports.
I did think they say gaming is becoming kind of one of their top sectors again in terms of income over the last
Definitely
5
since
years.
definitely since
So
Momotaro, like
yeah,
they, because during the pandemic, when
hmm
you're a company that's focused on a lot of pachinko, which were not shut down, but like a lot of people were nervous to go to those, or the parlors they had were reluctant to buy a lot of new machines until they saw how everything shook out, and fitness clubs and things like that. Like they went back into video games for that for a while and were tremendously successful with minimum investment. They're like, should we start up our gaming sector again? How about we make 3 games and just sell millions of them? Like, is like, you know. So it turned out really good for them. But like now that they can go back to their other stuff, we'll have to see. But like, I I want I want them to go, you know what? We're spending almost no money and we're making these Momotaro games and they're making so much money. But listen, hear me out, guys. How about we spend a lot of money making a game that a few people will really like? Like it's a hard sell, like
yeah, yeah,
Metal Gear, like a Metal Gear game has the potential to make more money than a Momotaro game. but
But
at
the costs.
20 times the cost of producing.
Yeah.
Like it's it's
That was kind of the thing. If you look at their profits, it's like
yeah.
revenue when Metal Gear Solid 5 peak for the company. Costs whoosh, all the way up at the revenue mark, right? It's just and
Yeah.
then now it's like revenue half of what they used to make, but also almost entirely profits.
It's
So
so
yeah.
you got a team of like 20 people making these. Like, I mean, obviously they're outsourcing other people, but like the
Yeah, yeah,
core team is just like a few people or whatever. It's like you probably have as many people working on a new Momotaro game as you had a dedicated team doing Quiet's eyelashes in Metal Gear Solid 5.
yeah.
Like, like it's you know what I mean? It's just like there's no real comparison, and I hate it. I hate it because I mean I like Momotaro games, I do, but like I want them to make new Castlevania games. I want them to
Yeah.
make I want them to revive the Hudson properties. Where is my photorealistic PC Genshin game? Like I want Bonk. I want my
The highest polygon forehead.
yeah, there's so many properties that they're just sitting on that make me sad. Do you know what I mean? Like because there's all, but like I don't know if they could even do them justice anymore though, because Red Company is kind of just doing like Otome games now, but they could bring back the Far East of Eden series. They could they had a bunch of awesome shooter franchises. Like there's so much that they picked up with that Hudson catalog that they're just like, I know we could put them into one of our pachinko machines and we'd still make a profit off how much we paid for them. But I hate it. No,
Yeah.
no, you don't. No, stop being successful. You
So
know?
did your family play the most recent Momotaro Densetsu games? And like what was that experience like for you? Was it just kind of like, it's a board game, or was there or did those games do something a little bit more, do you feel like
No,
in
actually,
terms of
I haven't played the new ones. I think the most recent ones we have are some of the PlayStation 2 ones. I should. Like for me though, like yeah, I should because some of them are not that expensive these days because when the new one comes out, the older ones go cheap. But like part of me keeps holding out hope that they're going to release one in English.
mm,
And I actually bought Billion Road in English, but it's not that good. It's
yeah.
okay. But my kids were like, we'd rather play Momotaro Densetsu. And I'm like, yeah, but
Yeah.
that one's not in English yet. And they're like, I can get through it,
Yeah.
but I'm going to lose
Yeah.
because my kids can strategically translate for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, you know, so, and
So what you're saying is you try to get you don't allow them to have the advantage when you buy
yeah,
competitive games.
like, I don't
Nothing
know.
that I can't read.
I'll tell you what, I'm gonna buy one so we can talk about it again later. I'll buy one. It'll be an experience. But like there were so many rumors that they were gonna release one in the West. They every time there's a new one announced, because like one of them even got like they even released like an English logo for it. Like they had designed an English logo or whatever, and they did the same. They did the same thing with Sakura Wars back in the day. And police knots got cover art and everything, sorry, I gotta let it go, it's been 30 years. um but like I keep holding out hope that like they're gonna try that series in the West, because like things that I never thought would get a Western release have recently been. You know what I mean? Like Soccer Wars has Western, games now. Taiko no Tatsujin has gone on. Puyo Puyo no longer has to be Dr. Robotnik's mean bean machine. It can be Puyo Puyo now. Like there's a lot of stuff. So it's like some of the holdouts, I'm just like, why? Let me give you my money. But I don't know. It almost seems strange, the holdouts these days too. You know what I mean? Like it's like what are you waiting for exactly?
um I'm kind of curious because we have kind of like jump back and forth between like kids games and family
All right.
games, and I feel like the second part of the show. Well, I think I realized halfway through is like this. Your family game time is mostly like family experience, so I think I wanted to ask questions about that. And so family games seems to kind of fit into there a little bit better than kids games. So I kind
Sure.
of switched over to that a little bit.
No,
I
my
am
family
curious.
doesn't. My family doesn't play kids games. Only I do.
Yeah, I was about to ask. So, since we didn't
Yeah.
spend a lot of time on kids games specifically, I did want to just kind of check to see like what were the games that you liked the like what were the games that maybe surprised you the most? Um, and
Sure.
maybe actually talk about games that you bought for your kids that you ended up liking more. Maybe that'd
Sure.
be like an interesting thing to approach to that.
Oh, sure. Sushi Striker. I bought for my kids, but it's kind of hard. It's kind of it's harder than the art style lets on. That it ramps up the difficulty really quick, and it requires a lot more coordination than like most puzzle games. Have you played Sushi Striker?
I have not, no, but
Hidden gem. I'm telling you. That's a game that I feel is going to be expensive in the future because it's a game that everybody ignored when it came out.
it was deeply discounted here for a while. I don't know how much
Yeah.
it is now, but yeah, at the time you could get it for like $5 at a Best Buy, no
Yeah.
problem. So
It is a game that nobody wanted to buy a full price puzzle game despite quality. But it is a game with a epic story, tons of gameplay modes that never should have launched at what was it, $40 or $50 or something like that. It launched, it was way too expensive when it came out. And like, it is a really good game. It's deep. It has collectability and like almost a deck building element. And like it's a really good game that which has an incredible theme song that nobody wanted when it came out. And they released on both Switch and the 3DS, which everyone was like, "Why are you?" I think the 3DS one is incredibly valuable now because I think it wasn't as produced as much. I'm not sure, but anyway, but that's a game that like I bought for the kids, but it was way too hard for them, and they're like, "Nope," and I'm like, "Then I shall play it."
you mentioned earlier that you want to talk about difficulty a little bit. I don't
Oh
remember
my
the
goodness.
context of what that was.
Okay, okay,
Did you want to kind of go down what you want to talk about with
well,
that now that you've brought it back up, or
okay. So this game is called Ninja Hattori-kun, and this game is made by the creator. I mean, the characters are made by the creator of Doraemon. So like, the target age is maybe 6 or 7 years old. I cannot beat this game. I have been trying for years. I
is
cannot
it
even get through
hard?
it.
Because I feel like there's always a distinction, especially with old games. Hard because the game design was not quite there, or hard because the game just made hard in a like design fashion. Like intentional hardness versus unintentional hardness, maybe.
Due to my skill level, it's hard to give an unbiased opinion. But I would say that as a game, it's not that it's broken, but it is that I feel like the hardness was inflated beyond where it needed to be for the target age. But like, you can't have a game that someone picks up and beats the first time they play it. But still, this game is really hard. You know, like it's a lot of the Doraemon games are really hard too. My
Yeah.
kids gave up on them. They're like, this is too hard. Um, there's a
Which
few
is
that.
interesting because I'm
Yeah.
kind of surprised. Both Doraemon games I played were pretty easy for the most
Which
part.
ones have
So
Which ones have you
the
played?
first Game Boy one, I believe, and
Sure.
then the first 64 one.
Yeah, yeah. That.
Those are
But
both
like,
pretty easy. So
yeah. Um, anything that's like an RPG type game or whatever, or the one that I love the most is the first PC Engine one. That's basically like a like Pac-Man Bomberman ish game, which makes sense. It was made
oh,
by Hudson.
interesting. Yeah.
Great game, one of my favorites. And it gets very hard, but it starts off easy enough that the kids can beat the first 20 levels. You know what I mean? Like, but then it gets hard. I still haven't beat it, but like that's a manageable thing. You don't need to beat the game, but like some of these kids games, I can't beat the first level. And the most surprising one recently is there's a Hello Kitty Mahjong game that is the hardest Mahjong game I've ever played. I have never played a harder
do
one. Like,
do kids understand mahjong usually? I feel like as in the
oh,
West at least, like even
sorry,
adults don't know what they are.
sorry.
So.
It's a Shanghai type mahjong game, like
Oh,
the
okay. So like,
mahjong solitaire. But like, they
gotcha.
don't have the Activision license to use the word Shanghai, but it's
Yeah,
so they
yeah.
call it a mahjong game. But like, it's not. But it is so hard. But like, it's a simplified tile set, so like,
Mhm.
it should be really easy because there's less pieces on the board. But the levels are designed in such a way that failure is almost certain. Like, you really have like it's I don't know why it's so hard. I cannot clear a board. I just cannot. It is
I
so
wonder if
hard.
in like trying to simplify it, they made it harder because you have to match up perfectly, right? Like you can't have any remaining tiles. So if they reduce the number of tiles, maybe it just reduces the room for error even more so. So
Hello Kitty Bowling is the hardest bowling game I've ever played. It is I struggle to get any pins, and I've tried it several times. It is I've found a way to sort of play it, but like, it is the hardest bowling game I've ever played. It is
what's
very
hard about it in that case?
it might just be broken. Like, it just might be
Mm.
a bad game, but like, it's like there's several different gauges that have to be perfect in order to do anything other than a gutter
Oh,
ball.
the timing is really tight,
Like, a Hello
basically.
Kitty
Yeah.
bowling game should be the equivalent of bumper bowling. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
should definitely be very easy. Kids should be able to a kid who reasonably plays it for for a number of times should be able to get a perfect game eventually.
Yeah.
There's
Do
this
you
browser. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You go first.
There's this browser game that is a Winnie the Pooh baseball game that
Yes.
is notorious for being nearly impossible.
I've seen people stream it trying
Yes.
to
Yeah.
beat it.
Yeah.
So
It is just absolutely madness how hard it is. Just and like, there was a lot of that in the Famicom days of like taking a license, and like the Transformers game on the NES, just like the Famicom, despite being it's a broken game, really, like it is. But like, I have never been able to clear the first level, and nor have I met another person who is able to. Like, it is one. I mean, it was the episode of a notorious Game Center CX, you know, episode, because but like, Transformers are, in Japan at that time, were like for little kids. Like, now, you've got your adult Transformers fans or whatever, but still the game is just broken and impossible. Like, it was, but like, there must have been I mean, it was bought by children, very, very disappointed children. Like, there's no way anybody enjoyed this. It's just
this might get back to our first question a little bit, but there's I think there's an idea that like no game should be made for kids sometimes. And I think when it comes to difficulty, there's like I think the intention maybe in that statement, and maybe I'm misrepresenting it, but
yeah,
is that games should be designed to be accessible
sure.
rather than they should be designed to be simple
Yeah,
and like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So that doesn't necessarily mean making a game for a kid, but it sounds like what you're saying at the moment with like Hello Kitty bowling or something like that, right? Is that maybe it should have been made more simple because at some point if the kids can't interact with it and they're the primary audience, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that a line you want to walk, I
I don't
guess?
know.
Do
I
you have
mean,
any thoughts on
when
that?
it comes to Hello Kitty bowling, maybe you should have stopped it. You said maybe it should have been made, and you paused for a little while, like, and that could have been the end of your thought. It's like, maybe it shouldn't have been made. Like, it's like, because it doesn't seem to be a game with any particular target audience in mind. But like, um, I think there is the idea there. I think there are games that should be that are kids games that are purely kids games. Are you familiar with any of the humongous software point and click adventures? We're talking like Putt Putt.
I did
Um,
play putt putt when I was a kid. Yeah.
yeah, like, that is a game that like is way too simple for adults, but great for the kids. Not that
Yeah.
an adult couldn't take some enjoyment playing it. I enjoy. I've
Well,
played one
remind
of
me, it's
the
like a point and click game basically, and I think a lot of it is just clicking on things and it reacts to you, right? I don't think there's a lot of mechanics, right?
It's basically a LucasArts adventure game that is very straightforward. Like you can click on anything. So there's certain things you need, but just by spending enough time interacting with the game, you will eventually win. And there's no fail state. And like there's enough going on in the game that like even if you are not making any progress, you're going to kind of be discovering things that are new to it. And like that's a game that like but it's very clear that a child will get more enjoyment out of it than a grown up because it is made because there is no particular challenge to it,
Mm-hmm.
but that it is, whereas I think Nintendo, the scalability of their games is kind of amazing. Because like Super Mario 3D World, for example, is fairly easy to clear, even for a kid. But then they take you to these extra stages, which are insanely hard. Super Mario Odyssey has a reasonable challenge for you know, a second or third grader to beat. But to get every moon is a challenge that will, you know, provide something for a lot. But like Nintendo likes to tack that thing on to optional things rather than, getting all the stars in something is not required, but to do so can be a challenge. I mean, a lot of people criticized the new Kirby game because it was so easy to beat, but it's also quite hard to fully complete. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever fully 100% a Kirby game. Not necessarily because
Right.
I couldn't do it, but it's not what I'm there for with Kirby. For Kirby, I'm there to have like a very simple, fun time,
I
kind
got
of
my
go through the
I
world.
got I got
Yeah,
my experience. I'm good.
yeah, yeah. But
Um
I do know those games. Like I think maybe Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, I maybe did the most with, and that one was a little tough because it was kind of almost like Metroidvania like, where you had to like move power ups between different parts of the world map and stuff like that. So it's a little challenging. But
there's a GameCube PlayStation 2 game called Door the Explorer, and it's like something goes to something purple planet. I don't remember exactly. And that is a kid's game in the purest sense. Like it is not particularly educational because there's not, I mean, I think there's a couple Spanish words sprinkled in, so I guess you could possibly label it as edutainment of like because you got to put some shapes in the right order in one part and they speak it in Spanish. And so whatever. But for the most part, it is a platformer that you cannot lose. That is very, and like it is a game that my kids liked a lot because it was very, 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 very easy. And it is a game that I found zero fun with. But like in my but had I grown up with Dora the Explorer as a child, I may have found some really nice nostalgia to it. So like if there were games like that based on properties I grew up with, I can see myself having. So like this Peppa Pig game is not built for me exactly, but
yeah,
like my kids might go back to it in 20 years with fond nostalgia. But like yeah, but pure kids games, they're not Nintendo doesn't really make many. The ones that they had were mainly licensed out. Things like Mario is Missing, Mario's Time Machine, those were kids games that weren't going to be much beyond kids. Yeah. Sorry, you had a point that I totally cut you off on when I was talking about the incredibly difficult Winnie the Pooh baseball game.
I don't remember what it was anymore.
Yeah, I
But
know. I'm
I was
sorry.
mostly just kind of like, I think that was my follow up though. Was basically that of just like, hey, like I think what I'm trying to figure out, and I think I get this from you per se, is that like kids games, like, and again, this kind of comes back to the beginnings. Like this kind of comes back to kids games kind of have their own appeal, and in some ways, even though it's not for me, and in some ways, Like I've played some games before where it's just like I don't have any fun with this whatsoever. But like I can kind of see why somebody would like it. And it's like, oh, and like in some ways that's kind of fun just to kind of get a glimpse into somebody's world. What is like a Monster High fan getting out of the Monster High Wii game? And I don't know anything about Monster High,
Yeah.
and I don't like this video game very much.
Sure.
But it's kind of interesting to think about for me. I don't know if that's like a specifically me thing or not. Of just like, oh, what is the appeal here for,
Oh, oh,
that kind of thing. But
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. Did you see the trailer for the Minecraft movie?
I did watch it today actually for the first time. I was
Um,
like 5 days late, but
I'm
it
looking at that,
looks not great to me.
and
But hey, man.
no, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, yeah, that's something that's happening. I just, but my son is so pumped, and I will not criticize him for that because, well, do I have it behind me? I'm gonna, dang it, if I would have known I needed props, maybe. Oh, here we go. I will never criticize because of this.
Oh yeah, a laser disc of the Mario
For
Brothers
for
movie.
anybody who is listening to the audio version, I am holding a laser disc of the Super Mario Brothers movie, which I saw in the theater twice.
Yeah.
And
I
yeah,
really liked that movie.
it is a bad movie. There's
I like it
nothing
though.
good about that movie. Nope. I mean, no, it is not. And
I was a kid.
part of me even knew it at the time. Part of me even knew it at the time. And like I have apologized to my father because I was not young enough to go to a movie myself. But he had to take me to see that. And because as an adult, I mean, it's hilarious now. Like on a kind of like a what were they thinking sort of level, and the amount of actual talent in that movie being given the most garbage of things to work with, like you got you got two Academy Award winners in there, like just it mind blowing, you know, or at least nominated. I don't know if they won, but anyway, like how it got made, how it just everything about it is fascinating. Thus, why I still watch it occasionally. But like to call it a good movie, but I think it's the same way for a lot of the kids' games. Do you know what I mean? Like it doesn't really matter if it's good or not. You're buying it for the license or for the or for the whatever. So like,
In the case of the Mario Brothers movie, it'd be seeing Mario
sure,
realized in like a way that just never was before, right? Because before that, he was a little sprite guy, right, and a cartoon character, right, and seeing it brought to a real world is I don't know. I guess like at the time that was just like the closest thing you get to like maybe like a AAA version of your favorite thing, right?
oh man, I
In
just
terms of visuals, right? So
I was so excited for it. I
yeah.
was so excited for it, and I it's again, I made myself like it because I needed to like it so much because I'd invested so much. You know, yeah. I all objectivity was out the window.
um, I did want to kind of ask you like one last question. I think we'll probably wrap up then. As this might be hard to answer because you only live your one life, right? But maybe because your parents weren't really into games, so maybe you can kind of like have a better idea of what this is. Um, like with video games being a part of your kind of like family life, right? And obviously, it sounds like it's actually kind of a more recent thing that you guys have as a family started playing
Yeah.
more. Obviously, your daughter, your older daughter, you've had this kind of direct experience with. What how would you say video games have like positively affected or maybe negatively if you want to say but affected like you think your family life and raising a family and like in a way that you think if you didn't have video games to be a part of your life that might
That's
be
a great question.
lacking or anything like that.
That's a great question. I think Minecraft had an intensely positive impact on my son. He was a very shy boy who wasn't a talker. And like, we were actually a little concerned because he basically didn't express verbally much when he was, and he had a very hard time finding any connection with other kids. And he liked his Legos, and I thought maybe I knew Minecraft was popular, so I picked that up for him. And now suddenly he had something he was very good at, a way to non-verbally express his creativity, because he's mostly on creation mode, not the game. He never plays it online. But also it gave him something where he had some connection to the other kids around him. Something that he enjoyed, that even though maybe he's still a shy kid and doesn't talk about it, he has something in common with other kids his age, that makes him feel a little bit less like an outsider. And for him explaining, um, like last night before bed, he's like, "Dad, can I tell you some more about the Minecraft mobs I really like?" And I'm finding myself going, "It's pretty late right now. You can tell me about one mob." And like he's smart, so he's like, "I'm going to tell you about Creeper because there's so much on the Creeper. Everybody, like, oh, that's a good choice, And but like it's I don't understand his game super much, but like he wants to tell me about it, and he wants to share it, and it's something where um it has it has been something that broke him out of his shell. Is Minecraft the game that I love? It is not, but I can see the value of it. You know what I mean? And like Animal Crossing was a way of us being able to kind of express some of the things we weren't able to do because we weren't able to leave the house at the time. We could go fishing, we could decorate the house, we could have a park. We would make spaces in our world, our town, that we had our own houses that reflected the things we liked, and we made communal space like gardens and things like that, which was a way for us to collaborate in a way we couldn't physically do at the time, and gave us a way of having something to talk about that was new, because we were all in the house all the time, so nobody did anything new. How was your day? I don't know, I was over there, you know um and now on another level, like, I was very worried that by the time my kids became teenagers, especially the girls, that we wouldn't have anything in common and we wouldn't have anything to talk about anymore, that they were going to be going off and doing the teenager stuff, and but like through a shared love of the gaming, I found a way to keep connected with my older kids, and I'm hoping, I mean, fingers crossed, that continues on, so yeah, I think definitely I mean, there's negatives too. I think I don't want them super addicted to screens. They play too much. They need to do their homework first.
I was a I
Yeah,
dodged homework nonstop when I
yeah,
was a kid, so
yeah. Oh yeah, me too, me too. But because of that, I know how important it is now. And in Japan, there's even more pressure that even
yeah,
if you
yeah,
don't have homework, to just keep up a general level of study. So there's that. But like overall, I would say it's definitely been a net positive in their lives and my relationships with them. So
as someone without kids, it's really hard to imagine what having a kid is like for me. But despite that, I have a ton of respect for people who do have kids, because ultimately, in a lot of ways, it's a really selfless thing to do, where you're essentially giving up like at least a minimum of like, 15 to 20 years of your life for the sake of somebody else. And in the case of Vinnk, even more so, since he has multiple kids, right? And so I don't want to say too much because, again, I'm observing from the outside, but sometimes when you look at like families, things can start to look and feel utilitarian. Somebody has only so much time and energy, and so much energy goes into every day, taking care of your kid. And I think it can become really challenging to like always stay engaged with like what they're interested in, and always, kind of think about what they're doing and what they're either playing or watching. And, when they value something long term, why they value that thing. And I wonder if like being able to put yourself in other people's shoes helps with that, where you can kind of sit down and think about like why somebody would enjoy something. And I wonder if like that aspect of Vinnk being able to enjoy kids games also kind of plays a role into, being able to see some of these things through the eyes of his own kids, right? And be able to see that value that they see in something. Obviously, I'm not a dad, so I don't know, but it feels like that's a really important thing to have, to make sure you can stay engaged with your kid and like use that as like a vehicle to build on your relationship even further, right? And so respecting what somebody might like in those games, might help in that situation. But I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. I'm just a single boy out here living his life. I got a cat. My cat does not enjoy video games, so... Anyways, if you want to check out Vinnk's stuff, he does Famicom Dojo along with his co-host Sean, and podcasts and various videos. I think they're on a bit of a lull at the moment, but I think they come back from time to time. I remember he talked about doing a show called like Two Boobs Watch the Tube or something, where they watch movies together or something like that. But also, you can also check out many kids' video games if you go buy games for him on Japan Retro Direct. Again, that's where I get almost all my import games from, so I highly recommend personally, but obviously I got a bit of a bias there. And a bit of a side note, Momotaro Dentetsu, it's getting an English release. It's the Asian region release, but because by the time you're hearing this, it will be out shortly. But maybe go check Vinnk's site. Maybe he's got old Momotaro Dentetsu for you to pick up now. I haven't checked. I don't know if it's actually there, but there are a lot of magical things on Japan Retro Direct, so go check out Vinnk's store.